Thanks for joining us today and talking about affordable housing.
Oh,
Before we
absolutely.
start, I just a question that I'd not sent in advance that I'd love to get your thoughts on is what does home mean to you?
What does home mean to me? Oh, wow, that's
Yeah.
a great question. Yeah, so I come from a family of home builders. First, maybe two generations ago, rudimentary home builders, and then, and I suppose really the generation ahead of me, home designers. My dad's older brother is a residential architect, and I've designed a couple homes myself. And so I've spent a lot of time thinking about exactly what home is. To me, home is a retreat. It's the one place where on good and bad days, you come back for the sort of solace and the celebration. And certainly in our stage of life, for my wife and I, home is a place of joyful chaos with a lot of small children. But I think more than anything, it's I think the privilege of owning a home or having a place that is yours as a type of security and privacy and solace that is different than any other place. And you can change homes, and some people do more frequently than others. I've always been fascinated at how some people, despite resources to live in an extravagant residence, choose to remain in the place that has been known as home, because I think home does take on its own meaning to a lot of us in such a way that we almost can't detach ourselves from the place that becomes home.
Mm-hmm. So I guess then the first question that I have, you can see the connection with why home and having it be affordable is so important. So on your list of top issues facing the county, where would you rate affordable housing and why?
Well, a lot of our campaign has been about defining the role of county mayor in the next 8 years, as opposed to, I think, our relatively weak understanding of the job over the last 10, 20, 30 years. And I say relatively weak because I think in this community, many people have known who the county mayor is, but we've only had two over the last 28 years. And the county has changed tremendously. Residential development has changed tremendously. It probably means that the county is going to end up playing on an increasing basis a larger role in housing and affordable housing than it ever has. I mean, as you guys well know, so much of the new residential development in this county is in unincorporated parts of Hamilton County that's not in a municipality. And so a subject that used to be really the domain of Chattanooga city government is much, much broader. And it is, to me, directly connected to our quality of life. Going back to my years in business, and we talked about this, Martina, in the conversation when I came down there and sat with you all. I am a son of Chattanooga, son of Hamilton County, love this place, but I also, just the way I am wired, am not inclined to only talk about our good qualities. Like, the reality is this is a really difficult place to grow up a young Black male, maybe a really good place to grow up a white male in a middle class or upper middle class family. And that was my experience. And so I believe that affordable housing and education are two of the often overlooked elements of our quality of life. The quality of life, more broadly speaking, certainly, if you do well, or if you've done well enough and have the agency in your life to have moved to Chattanooga and live downtown, hard to beat this mid-sized city. But for so many people, it is a difficult place with very poor education prospects and, more than ever, unaffordable housing.
So you touched upon this a little bit, but what do you think specifically is the role that Hamilton County can play when it comes to addressing affordable housing?
Yeah, well, you've seen some of this just in the last calendar year, where the county has come to the table and participated alongside the city in pilots that would, at least in theory, reduce the cost of multifamily housing closer to the city center. Again, I think these conversations over the next decade are going to spill out beyond the city, and it'll be interesting to see how your organization adjusts to the reality that we're going to soon have built on almost all the dirt in the city of Chattanooga. And of course, much to the chagrin of a lot of people who live in those outerlying parts of the county, development has come their way and is going to continue to come their way. And so I think the county has to begin to explore how it plays as much of a role as the city does. The county government is limited in ways the city is not. We don't have home rule here. A lot of people don't understand. For all intents and purposes, county government can't make a law in the same way that the city can create an ordinance. And so there are some limitations, but at the same time, when we, when a pilot's been put together traditionally in this community, it's particularly in the city of Chattanooga, it's usually a combination effort of city and county government. And I'm wide open to those conversations. I do think that the future of our community and the quality of life here should be defined by the quality of life of all of our citizens, not just by ones who are in the top few percent or in the, at an income level where they can, buy a nice home in a safe neighborhood. And I think an example of how we ought to be having more comprehensive conversations about the role of government in providing for its citizenry is as we explore how we may invest tens of millions of dollars of taxpayer dollars on the Wheelan site and the contiguous sites over there by the river. There is there are a lot of influential Chattanoogans who want to see a baseball stadium built there. There has not been a serious community conversation about any alternative. If the roughly $75 million in public investment that would go into that stadium, for example, were even a portion of it were targeted towards affordable housing, might that be a significant economic driver? We just haven't had that conversation because as it relates to that piece of property, there's been an obsession with a baseball stadium and only a baseball stadium. But when a community makes these generational type investments or even considers it, I would say maybe coming out of this pandemic more than ever, affordable housing should be part of that conversation.
So outside of the pilot, which you touched upon, what do you believe are some of the other tools that the county can use to positively impact the production of both affordable and market rate housing?
Yeah, well, I mean, one of them is potentially obvious. I just don't know what the timeline is. And that is, well, it is obvious. I don't know what what timeline the potential of its development would be. What's going on at the McDonald Farm? I mean, the county's acquisition of this massive tract of land is an outsized example of the reality, as you guys well know, that county and city government own a lot of land. And on that land are probably some of the more realistic opportunities to experiment in affordable housing and next generation affordable housing developments. And I think it'd be really interesting to sit down and even by tiers break down land the county is sitting on. That's land that's owned by taxpayers and look at on a priority basis and even in terms of kind of the quality of life basis in terms of where those tracts of land are and how they may be developed. And, I mentioned McDonald Farm because I don't know that in the 8 years that I would love to serve as county mayor, we've committed to only serving 2 terms. I think a lot of the development up there at McDonald Farm might and should come beyond 8 years, but a lot of the planning and infrastructure development will come in the next 8 years. And I could envision a real futuristic hub that provided for workforce affordable housing up there. And that is directly, that's not even the city of Chattanooga. That would be a county-led project. But one of the reasons why I really am preaching patience on that project up there is that it maybe more than any tract of land the county has ever owned could, in a way that we may not even fully understand and appreciate now, present opportunities for not just development. And I'm not sure that it's even industrial development in the traditional sense that we think about it. I mean, I think it could end up being a data center like you see in North Alabama. But there certainly is the land and the beauty. If you've ever been up to that tract of land, it would be a pretty extraordinary place to live. And because the county owns it all, there's a lot of leverage in having a conversation around workforce housing up there.
So just as a follow-up, how would you see transportation? I mean, one of the challenges with that site is it is pretty far away from the city center where there are jobs. And
Yeah.
so how would you see the solving that or addressing that issue?
Yeah, well, I mean, what I'm talking about is I think you're gonna end up having a lot of jobs long-term on that site. And I mean, my hunch is that you will have, and you could, if we plan it right, you might actually have a variety of jobs up there. And that's when I talk about workforce housing, I'm talking about, what may end up being effectively a walk to work type option, rather than taking the first industrial development option and, taking whatever stinky, dirty thing it may be. It's one of the reasons why I'm going to really encourage generational thinking with that tract of land, because I do think it could be really kind of a futuristic combination, residential, recreational, and economic development site. But then I also think one of the great questions here that we've, Mayor Kelly, I think, shined a light during his campaign on the deficiencies of CARTA and our public transportation system here. And there may very well be a really unique opportunity to connect the north part of this county with the downtown hub. A question that I got really fascinated by 6 or 7 years ago when I was in the business world is whether we might actually ever put people back on trains here. There are train tracks that run right through McDonald Farm. I think I can't think of anything that would be more connected to our legacy here than if you actually had some kind of passenger rail that went north and east. You theoretically could have really two of the most exciting corridors in the community connected to downtown via passenger rail, and it would harken back to our past. It also may be for those who get sick of sitting an hour of traffic going around the ridge cut, it potentially could be part of our future.
A lot of light rail across the country is built on where industrial railroads were laid.
Right.
So the right of ways are already there. You just have to, I think, change the track out. So right. Yeah, it presents opportunity.
Yeah.
So Weston, tell me what would you do in your role as mayor to encourage developers to build affordably priced housing? Or maybe we should just even define it as housing in a variety of shapes, sizes, and prices.
Yeah, I often describe the job of county mayor as a leadership position. And if you really study the state statute that created the position, I'm right. More than it's a management position, it's a leadership position. And the reason I answer your question that way is often the reason that developers back away from what amounts to affordable housing is because they get an enormous amount of community pushback from that affordable housing. And I am signing up for a difficult job where on any given day, half the community may be mad at you. And I'm okay with that. I mean, I'm motivated to run here as a dad of 4 who really does care deeply about the future of the community. And to plan for a fast growing, diverse community like ours requires hard conversations. And you can't always kick the can down the road as we've done in infrastructure here. So part of this question for developers is we the adults, the elected officials are going to have to be more thoughtful about wastewater and roads and generational infrastructure planning. But some of it also is if you have developers who are interested in affordable housing in corridors of the county that can accept the growth. A county mayor, I think, is maybe the most key person in bridging the gap between the community and developers to say, we don't live in a perfect world, right? And if we want people to be able to live and own their own home or condo or live in an affordable apartment, if we want that, which we all say we do, then there have to be some concessions at the end of the day, because life is just, in politics is no different. It is a series of trade-offs. What we've tried to do in this community is say, oh, we want a long-term wastewater solution, but it can't go there and it can't go there and it can't go there. And so I really think, I often talk about vocational education and the need for the community to recommit to training our young people. But there's obviously this stigma that exists in our culture about not going to a 4-year college. Well, I think the leadership opportunity of a county mayor is the person who ought to fight that stigma. Honestly, I think this is another one of those examples where a vocal county mayor who's willing to just kind of step in the gap and say, hey, I'm not saying we have to do this exact deal, but I just want you to know this is one of those tough trade-offs where we can all, kind of get in our corner and get real mad and shut it down. I would say the political culture of this county, more than the city, in the last decade has been, we're much better at saying no than we are at kind of productively finding a path forward. And we're paying a price because so many people are mad that our infrastructure is crumbling.
You kind of answered some of my next question, which is obviously there's often pushback when not even affordable developments, but just development in general gets pushback from neighbors. People don't like change. They don't want development. But as mayor, how would you, so you just talked about how you see the role as leadership, but walk me through a little bit. You'll now have 11 council members, county commissioners, and you have the neighborhood contingent. So how would you see yourself building the support and the political will for folks to get to yes?
Yeah, well, this is the sausage making of politics. And I think one of the benefits that I bring to the job compared to my two opponents in the Republican primary, they both come from county government. They're already baked into the alliances and the politics, and I'm not. And I say that respectfully, but I mean, Sabrina's the county commission chair, has been twice. Matt's dad has worked in the courthouse for most of my life. My intention as it applies to the job, from affordable housing to education to infrastructure issues, is to sit down with the 11 Republicans and Democrats, no different, and break bread on a regular basis and establish a rapport. I don't have the bandwidth in my personal life, Martina, to engage in the sort of drama of county politics. Too many kids, too many things, too many real issues that the county needs to address. And I know that answer is not a direct one to affordable housing, but you and I both know that there aren't clean cut, clear answers like this. This is the part of politics where you have to negotiate out imperfections, and nobody can get everything they want. And it is easier in a county like this, or it's proven easier to say no as opposed to say yes. But the continuation of the Coppinger legacy in county government is one of pragmatism and thoughtfulness and open-mindedness towards providing, for example, affordable housing in predominantly white and predominantly Black. And, increasingly there are going to be parts of our community that are predominantly Latino.
Yeah, that's perfect. Well, that's the end of my structured questions, but before we go, and thank you so much, is there anything that you want to add or say as part of your campaign message?
Yeah, well, like I shared with you when we sat down and got to know each other a little bit, I'm unapologetic in my passions around public education. I mean, our desire is to bring about a renaissance in public education in our community that I think is by far and away the most profound thing that could happen in this county. It's the most important role of the next county mayor. This job of county mayor is different than it was in 1994 when we last had an open race. We didn't have a merged school system that presents about as many challenges as it does opportunities, but there are a ton of both. When you run a $500 million a year school system, certainly, you're serving students in a rural environment, in an urban environment, and a lot of them in a suburban environment. But there are equally opportunities for us to customize education so that we're meeting kids where they're at. That ultimately is my real passion. And I think, again, it's appropriate. It's 64% of the county budget. So it's not like I'm taking a small part of county government saying this really ought to be the focus. No, I'm begging and pleading with people to just recognize what county government really does. And we all will benefit across the board. Our dangerous neighborhoods will become safer if the quality of education becomes better. Hopeless kids who often, end up on the street and dabbling in drugs and often criminal activity are going to have more hope if they've been offered not just a one-size-fits-all path, maybe to a 4-year degree, but a litany of different options that will prepare them for a life of dignity and work. And so that's what animates me in the campaign. A lot of different issues that you cover as county mayor. The one you guys work on, I do believe, is directly connected to the quality of life here. And it's one that, again, the county mayor more than ever is going to end up playing a role in, simply based on where new development opportunities are.
And interestingly, home, it's been proven a secure, stable home provides better educational and health outcomes.
There's no
so
question.
Home and education good educational attainment and outcomes is so directly tied
No
to
question.
each other. So, yeah.
That's wonderful. Well, thanks for the work you do.
Thank you, Weston. Good luck on the campaign.